Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Trump announces a new peace deal for the Middle East as he holds crunch talks with Netanyahu at the White House. Moldova's pro-European party has won the parliamentary election as President Sandu warns of Russian interference. Golfer Rory McIlroy speaks out over fans' abusive behaviour at the Ryder Cup after Europe's historic win. Now, US President Donald Trump has announced plans for a Middle East peace deal as he held a joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Trump called it the greatest day as he thanked world leaders and announced his principles for peace. Take a listen.
President Trump, are you confident?
So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. The level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible, incredible.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Al Arabiya's senior presenter, Rawia Alami, and Dubai 92 presenter, Jono Hayes. Thank you so much for being here with me. I must admit, this is a pretty fast-moving situation, Rawia and Jono. Rawia, we were just listening to that press conference before we came on air to do the show. And the greatest day in civilization, Donald Trump said. He said, Bibi and I worked well together. And he's saying a peace in the Middle East, and we know this conference is still going on. What more did we find out?
Well, we know that the deal, as President Trump described, everybody agrees to it, apart from Hamas. He said that, you know, they are the last people still to agree to this deal, yet he called it historic. He focused more on the point that this is a conclusive peace deal. He talked about peace in the Middle East, not just for Gaza. The details are starting to come out, and they are, I mean, aligned with the 21-point points plan for that Donald Trump has put forward for the peace in the Middle East and end of war in Gaza. He said that Arab and Muslim countries have committed to demilitarize Gaza and Hamas. And he says, I hear Hamas want that too. He said that there will be a new transitional authority in Gaza. He will be heading himself, President Donald Trump, he will be heading the international body that will be, he called it the Board of Peace, overseeing this deal, along with former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. More details, we're expecting more details to come out, you know, as the press conference goes on. And also we need to bear in mind that all the devil is usually in the details. So this is really great that such a deal has been reached, of course, pending the agreement of Hamas that it signs on the deal. But yes, the devil is in the details. So we are yet to see how is that going to play out? How is it going to be implemented? President Trump talked about 72 hours to release all hostages. Practically, we're yet to see if that's doable or not.
And I think these are the big questions and the grey areas when it comes to this proposal that the US has put forward to Netanyahu. As you said, Rawia, rightly, Hamas has not agreed to this yet. We wait for their agreement. And also, we are seeming to get this real big feeling that so many people have been involved in it. And we also saw Benjamin Netanyahu. he actually called Qatar's leader and apologised for that strike on Doha. And it seems to be like this has been a coordinated effort. So the smoke signals are good.
I think what it was, and we heard certainly a name check for so many world leaders that we'd lost count, to the point where I'd started off with mentions of Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE, and then it just got so convoluted.
Europe,
again,
Indonesia.
Europe, Indonesia, we were right down to countries that we haven't really heard as part of this negotiation before. I think also that the language that was used by President Trump saying we need to get back our hostages now, it almost was this united front. We saw an Israel-USA united front from the Trump administration when he was giving the speech. And you're going to have to go through the bits and details of what was in there, because all of the facts were there, but they were surrounded with flowery language, which is what a lot of the time when we see a Donald Trump speech, that's what we expect. But the things that we know, and as Rawi said, we know that there'll be the demilitarization of Gaza, the immediate end to the war. We heard things like a police force to be trained up for Palestine as well, and the withdrawal of forces meaning no more fighting. If Hamas don't stick to this, that the USA will give full support to the annihilation of Hamas and the threat that they pose as well. And then we had the mention of the border peace, which Donald Trump says now everyone wants to be on, that he is in charge of. Like Rawi said, Tony Blair, more names to mention as well, but he went with the heavy hitters first. There is no role for Hamas in the governance of Gaza. We know that to be the case.
Apparently, we're just hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu now, and he's saying the Palestinian Authority can't have a role unless it goes through transformation.
That's a good point.
And that was
up until what we've heard of the press conference just before we came on the air, that point actually caught my attention, that there's no mention of the Palestinian Authority taking any role, any future role in Gaza. And so now Netanyahu is actually confirming this.
He is confirming it. He's saying they can't have a role without transformation. So that's something that he is confirming. But he has also said, Netanyahu, I support your plan. He tells Donald Trump, OK, Israel are inside right now. And Netanyahu warns it can be done the easy way or the hard way.
Well, yeah, because what he means by that is, and this is what we've heard the reiteration from Trump as well, saying Hamas need to agree to this. 72 hours, like you said, Rawiya, is a difficult time frame to turn around return of the hostages, considering that even today, 2 hostages were unaccounted for. We may not know where all the Hamas themselves may not know where all the hostages are.
Most probably they don't, yes.
They're at such a
all the
weakened,
bombing and destruction
and they're such a weakened force right now. Yes, I think they'll have to take this deal as well. It ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of what Hamas wanted, the complete removal of all the forces from Gaza. A lot of it's in there. But them having no role in government, that may not be something that they're willing to sign on to, even though they have no real governance or leadership themselves and are a terrorist organisation.
But the argument would be they have the support of the people still if you were to have an election within Gaza, and that's what Hamas would argue.
Hamas would argue this,
yes.
But no, I mean, there's no telling really if there is an election, especially after everything that Gaza went through, that this would be the outcome. Let's not forget that the Palestinian people elected Hamas in 2007 as a kind of reaction to the corruption of the Palestinian Authority at the time.
Yes.
Circumstances have changed, not that there is no corruption within the Palestinian Authority, but Hamas represents something different now than it did at the time. Yeah. When it was elected.
Yeah, I think there's 20 points in the plan. We know they're all in there somewhere in that speech that we've heard from Donald Trump. It's now a case of finding out exactly what those 20 points are. And I think the turnaround time is going to have to be quite tight on this. Hamas are going to be given a very short window of opportunity, 72 hours to get cracking on this, which means that ideally by close of business for the US's point of view, Hamas will need to come back and say, OK, because the US have said, we will annihilate Hamas if they don't agree to this.
I mean, but there is another point that is, I mean, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is on board with this deal, right? Having said that, there is a lot of pressure within Netanyahu's coalition government from right-wing members like Ben-Gvir, like Smotrich, who always threaten they will, topple this coalition. How is that gonna? I mean, is there an internal discussion? Was this plan discussed within the Israeli cabinet, possibly within Knesset, within the Knesset as well, so that he can announce that we're we agree to it or not.
So this is a question I asked Yotam Confino a little bit in my first show, who is a journalist from Israel. And he said to me, this is the thing. This is where the big question happens, because yes, Netanyahu can agree to this peace plan like we've seen today, but it still has to go back to the Knesset for a vote. And it still has to be done democratically. And the feeling is that the Knesset would get the majority to implement this plan, but then will the extreme right, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, veto it and the coalition fall apart. And then we literally go to elections in Israel as soon as that happens. So I think Netanyahu has to go home and he has to sell this as a win.
Yeah. And I think it is a win. If you look at it, certainly what we're looking at now, there's a lot of wins in there for Israel, and this is a very pro-Israeli truce more than anything else. And I think you have to look at that and think the war, I think from his point of view, from Netanyahu's point of view, the war has been so deeply divisive among Israelis. We've seen the protests on the streets. We've seen the families of the hostages just say they want the bodies, dead or alive, back with them. And I think that he needs to make a move on this. If he does anything but say, yes, I'm behind this deal 100%, he will be at real risk of
There's
falling.
a lot of internal pressure pressuring Netanyahu from both sides, whether it be the right or the Israeli public,
families,
exactly.
You know, and also from the international world. Let's not forget we just had the UN General Assembly over in New York, and so many countries recognized a Palestinian state who are traditional allies with Israel. And we saw all those people, Jono, just walk out of the UN General Assembly.
Really powerful.
And that was so isolating.
The imagery, I think, from that as well, and like you said, 140 out of 193 states who were at the UN General Assembly, and then for all of them to walk out, it really paints the picture where he may have stood there and gone, actually, maybe the game is up here. The traditional support that Israel would have had from many former bosom buddies of the country have fallen at the seams and said, no, we're recognising a Palestinian state. We're doing it officially. And I think at that point he thought, this is where I need to go. I need to get back to Donald Trump and I need to speak to him about this. And I think what Rawi said may be correct. There may have been discussions that have gone on behind the scenes saying, here's where you can go to, here's the limitations of what we're allowing you to do. Come back to us once you've agreed this, this and this. And if that then satisfies us, we will agree to this when you bring it back to the table once again. But I think he's gone in there knowledgeable, knowing that he would be able to walk away with the deal and where the limitations of that deal would have been with his parties.
Well, at the end of the day, also, it achieves the war's goals. Return of all hostages, dead or alive, demilitarization of Gaza, specifically Hamas, and Hamas will not have any part in the future of Gaza. So these are three very important Israeli goals out of this war, and they would be achieved if, from what we've heard about this plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good thing to also think about a little bit is right now we're still seeing the occupation of Gaza City. We're seeing bombing of high-rise buildings. Life is becoming untenable for many people in that region. And what we didn't really hear about was aid, getting aid to people, getting medical services back inside the country. The hospitals have been destroyed. The aid points, all the NGOs who are there. There's going to have to be such a big shift back into Gaza. And like we said earlier, it's all well and good on paper, but Hamas haven't commented. Yotam, once again, who I spoke to earlier, said they hadn't even seen the plan, according to who he'd been talking to. There's a lot of work to be done.
There is still, I'm sure there's a lot of details to be negotiated, behind the scenes as a result. But also, I mean, the plan itself, from what we know, also has some points that Hamas was pushing for, like aid to flow freely into Gaza under the supervision of international institutions and the UN, not the Gaza Foundation, as they have asked. So let's hope.
Yeah, I definitely think let's hope. But Netanyahu's also said to Hamas, if they don't agree to this, Israel will finish the job.
And the US supported them and said, listen, we will go in, you have our full support. That's exactly what it is. Now we know kind of what's in there. And again, it will take a couple of hours before we have the full details about everything that's in there. We know Palestinian Authority is going to be completely overhauled if it's at all to be involved in this, which is what Netanyahu has said. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. But a re-energization of the Abraham Accords, which was also reiterated by both President Trump and by Benjamin Netanyahu, is something that they're seen now as expanding and seeing more Arab and Muslim nations who will be part of the Abraham Accords. And I think this is, once again, we've seen Donald Trump solidify his Nobel Peace Prize 2026 efforts on this. And if it works, this is a game changer.
And, I couldn't agree with you more. Donald Trump, for all that we have to say about him, has brought all these different parties to the table. The Arab Muslim leaders, he's brought Israel to the table. He said European leaders to the table. So many people have been negotiating on it. And do you know what? If he can pull this off, and there can be peace in the Middle East,
in the world stage now, if anybody can pull it off, it is President Trump. If the political will is there to get this done, it will be done. I think.
The one mention that came through, and I think just when they did the recap, it was mentioned somewhere, maybe we missed it, but full aid immediately sent into the Gaza Strip if both sides agree to the proposal. So we'll have this flood of aid in, which at the end of the day, it's the citizens who are in Palestine, the Palestinians who are on the ground, who are suffering most. And I think that is something to see that is refreshing. Also, I think for Hamas to see something like that and think, okay, if there's any semblance whatsoever of care given for the people of Gaza and the Palestinians who are suffering most, seeing a deal like that certainly will secure them the aid that they want and a freeze on those lines of battlement which are currently there.
And bring some relief that's much needed to those people who have really suffered. But I'm sure we're going to have lots more on this story to discuss in the future. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that breaking news. Stay right there as we move on to another story now. And Moldova's pro-European party has won the election today, giving the president, Maia Sandu, a new majority in parliament and a stronger push towards membership. Sandu warned of massive Russian interference, calling the vote critical for the country's future. So, Jono, really, this was quite a big story that dominated for a little while. And what ramifications does this now have for Russia?
Well, Moldova and where it sits as well, you have to remember, is a key player in the fact of Ukraine, Russia, that's their border, and Moldova sits in the middle. And traditionally, Moldova had a pro-Russian government who've been in there for quite a long time. And they've also had a pro-Russian public who've said, right, that's where we're going to vote. This has been a big sway, and you might think, well, what has caused this as well? And we've seen 50%, and we've seen party action, solidarity, 50% of the vote, which is huge for them. And you might think, well, what has caused it? And one of the key things that's done this is the effects of the war. There's been the humanitarian effect. We've seen over 127,000 people from Ukraine make their way into Moldova. There's security spillover, which has been an issue as well. There's been the trade, energy crisis, which has gone on and it's spilled into Moldova as well. And there's inflation. And I think they may have found somewhat of a partner, or certainly a supporter, in the EU, and thought that this switch and this shift towards an EU-friendly and pro-EU party will secure them potentially in the future, and it may be a long time in the future, EU membership, but certainly would secure them more support and certainly more backing from the European Union. And I think, and this is certainly for a lot of Eastern Bloc countries, they see Europe as almost a handout, or at least be able to assist them in some way economically or otherwise. That may not necessarily be the case, because I think Europe is suffering its own fair share of consequences at the moment. But I think that's what's been seen with the party, and that's why they've kind of moved across. Now, Russia have kind of taken this stance where they are saying, listen, if this is what's going to happen, you guys are going to be pro-Europe, well, we're going to be pro-war. And that's the last thing that we need to hear right now. But I think Russia do this schoolboy bully tactics and kind of say, you know what, if you're going to be pro-Europe, we're going to be pro-war. How about that? Just to kind of create a little bit of animosity among the parties.
And I think what's also quite important about this election to say is the party who won with a majority, so they don't have to go into a coalition government like previously held in Moldova. So this gives them enough power within the government to pass these pro-EU laws and become closer and closer to joining the European Union. And I think that is something that no one was expecting, really. And Raul, let's talk a little bit about Ukraine, because obviously Moldova neighbouring Ukraine, and It's been a difficult weekend for Ukraine again.
Yes, definitely, with very heavy Russian bombardment all over Ukraine and also especially in Kiev, to the point that the Ukrainian president suggested a shared air defense umbrella recently. Apparently, he's asking, the proposal he has put it forward to neighboring countries. It should work on Ukraine's existing work on drone defense, but also it seeks European cooperation in surveillance and interception and defense industry coordination. Now, apparently, some countries are open to the idea, yet there are a lot of challenges.
I'm going to be honest with you. This idea sounds very good in principle, but it's going to be a lot of challenges.
It is, and I'll tell you exactly.
And it's going to cost a lot of money.
Exactly.
And it's going to take a long time. So we're seeing this threat right now from Russia. It's immediate, and we've had lots of warnings about it. And Europe is in a little bit of a crisis, let's be honest. We look at France. They've been struggling to even get a budget through. And we look at the cost of living in the UK. Is Europe able to afford this, and especially without the help of the US?
I doubt it. I doubt it, to be honest with you, with the way things are in Europe. I think this proposal is, as you said, all good on paper, yet it's not practical. It's going to take a long time. It needs very, very heavy investments. It needs even aligning military doctrines, legal framework, and that all takes a lot of money and also a lot of time. So it's doubtful.
There's also the Europe, and it's not every country in Europe, a lot of countries in Europe, of course, there's a huge support for Ukraine. There are some countries who've also said, you know what, actually, that's a Ukrainian problem. Let Ukraine deal with it. And we've heard that rhetoric a few times. There's
Even
been many.
from Donald Trump.
And Hungary have said the same thing as well. We've heard it before. So there's also the concern that EU and EU member states may not want their money being spent on something like this when the crisis really is on their own doorstep, which is the truth, as you said, for France and many other countries that are facing huge crises themselves that they're trying to deal with as well. So there is the risk of that. And I think what we're seeing, Moldova are trying to do it on a demonstration level more than anything else and saying, right, we're going to vote this direction because we want to prove that we are EU-centric and we have this fantasized view that European Union is going to come to the rescue and save us. And the reality behind it is the European Union is right now currently struggling to save itself, given the very, very, very tight budget that it's trying to operate on.
But then I was speaking to someone in my earlier show. His name was Roger Casal, and he made a good point. He said it has to be political will that makes us realise that the whole of Europe is under threat, and it's the sovereignty of what we need to keep together, the bloc together, and we need to do that all together, which I know is a nice sentiment, but it's wishful thinking at the moment.
Well, it needs resources in order to do that, and exactly this is what Jono has been saying, that with the current economic, political climate in Europe, that looks very unlikely.
They can't afford a war with Russia, and I think that's the threat that Russia stands by when it says.
But I don't think Russia can afford a war with
I don't
them
think
at
so,
the moment
but the
either.
threat is always something that makes everybody go, oh, hold on a second, Russia said war? That's always a panic. And that's what we're hearing again. And we're also hearing from an MI5 chief exec who said that we may already be in a war with Russia as well. The UK is already at somewhat of a war. It may be correct. There's a deepening kind of conflict that's going on without there being any actual arms across any borders. And there's this kind of conflict that's taking place. But when Russia puts the threat of war out, all of Europe takes a deep breath in and holds it for the longest period because they don't want to get into this. Can't afford to, don't want to have the arsenal to get into it.
And it's also nuclear weapons.
Of course.
Are then, of course, brought up straight away, and that puts fear and panic into everybody's mind. Of course. But once again, Donald Trump said 24 hours and I could get this done, but it's been a lot more complicated than he ever imagined.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump was hoping that this, solving or ending the war in Ukraine would be his ticket to the Nobel Prize. But I think he soon realized that that's way more complicated, maybe even than...
It's not an easier win.
Even than the Middle East, you know, the Israeli-Palestinian
But that's the bigger
conflict.
win. You know, he said now he's putting to bed something that's gone on, and he said it, I think he might be slightly off on his timings, but he said thousands and thousands of years. But he said that he's going to put that to bed. I think he's concentrated there.
Yeah.
And I think Ukraine and Russia will come next. Who knows, by January he may have solidified that.
And not just that, I mean, we've seen President Trump's change of position on Ukraine recently, where he said after, you know, he was talking about land concessions by Ukraine. Now he's saying that Ukraine can get all of their land back. And I think there's a lot of frustration on behalf of President Trump from Putin and, you know, lack of any intention for negotiations or reaching a peace deal. And I think this is why the shift is happening.
It's been a lot more tough, but maybe we could see the Nobel Peace Prize if he managed to pull off this.
Both.
Both of them.
Oh, this would be a very lucky strike.
But let's hope, because as Donald Trump always says, he wants to stop the killing. He's a man who wants peace. So maybe if he is able to succeed, there is some hope for the Ukrainians. Thanks for your thoughts on that. Now let's go on to another story. And the golfer Rory McIlroy has spoken out against the abuse he received during the Ryder Cup after Europe secured a historic win in New York against the USA. He said he thinks golf should be held to a higher standard after some supporters behaved badly towards European players at the event. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Look, it was a rough week for all of us, but at the same time, you know, we shut them up by our performance and how we played, and we tried to, you know, I chirped back a few times because it got to me a few times, but we tried to handle everything that came our way with class and poise, and for the most part, I felt like we did that. There was a lot of language that was unacceptable and abusive behavior, and but look, it's a minority of the crowd. It's not the majority. The majority of people here are true golf fans and are respectful, and let both teams have the same chance to hit the shots and play a fair contest. But you know, there was a small subset of people that behaved a little bit differently than that.
So there we are. Europeans won the Ryder Cup. It was pretty phenomenal last day. But wow, watching those scenes, that was a tough week, as Rory did say. You know, a lot of abuse aimed towards him and also towards the other Europeans. And at some point, we actually saw them lose their cool, which is not normal on a golf course.
It's not, but I think there was the Europeans lose their cool.
We saw McIlroy
and
use some colourful language.
There was, but I think he was egged on. I think he was spurred on. He got to the point where he was at breaking point. We saw something where I've never seen this happen before, but we saw bottles being thrown. His wife was unfortunately, and this is, again, there's no footage of this, but I fully believe that this is what's happened. And it turned into almost a ruffian's football hooligan-esque type of a vibe at the Ryder Cup. And I saw a quick piece to camera where they asked people if they thought that this was acceptable. The American fans who were there said, this is just a bit of, you know, sport banter. But I thought, this is not the game for it. You always see football hooliganism taking place at football games. Rugby games tend to be a bit more refined when the fans, they never really get into this bit of a back and forth. And golf has always been the smattering of applause from the side of the green, whereby it never is something whereby you shout out.
Exactly.
It's vocalise your thoughts. Very strange, very unusual.
The Ryder Cup can be quite rowdy, and especially in the US, but I agree with you, Jono. I just think it went well beyond the point of actually being
It's
reasonable.
very surprising. I mean, it is an elitist sport, usually played by elites. It's very expensive to actually play this sport. And usually the interest in it is also kind of elitist. But it's quite surprising to find this type of hooliganism in this specific sport. And especially because, I mean, it's not like football where the fans or the audience is sitting, you know...
up in the stadium.
Up in the stadium at a very at a distance from the players. They're very close.
They're touching distance.
They're extremely distracting. And then you have also, like, there's abuse, not just verbal abuse, even physical abuse with
there's always
McIlroy's wife.
Just seems to be there's an etiquette, there's a respect that's always between golfers. And that just didn't happen at the Ryder Cup. And the next one's in 2027, the next one's on home turf. For me, it's in the city where I'm from, in Limerick, in Ireland. Of course it's going to be different because you'll have respectful fans. And I'm not saying that that's what Europeans are, but there is not that element of, and I've never seen it happen before. And I've been to the DP World Tour and JGE, and you can see the players on the. It just doesn't happen. What's gone on with the sport?
And I feel like
what's going on in the world?
The world's gone mad. But I feel like when you watch golf, and I've been like, I've watched it live, you almost hold your breath when you hit the ball. So when they're about to, you're so respectful of it. But once again, it just shows how rowdy crowds can just change the whole atmosphere. But I actually think McIlroy played extremely well under that pressure because, there's always that criticism that McIlroy chokes, and this is what the crowd kept on saying to him. But for some reason, the more they said it to him, the better he played.
Yeah, and Shane Lowry, same thing. I think they did exceptionally well given the circumstances. I just question how this was allowed to happen. We maybe need to make it a non-spectator sport. And I don't think golf loses anything by not having spectators there, and that might be a controversial thing to say. But I feel, and this takes me back to COVID times, when we watch football games without spectators in the crowd, that was weird. It's jarring to not have that roar of the crowd.
But it's okay for golf.
I feel it's fine for golf.
Terrible.
And I watched the tennis with 2 other people in the entire stadium for the tennis for the finals of that, and it felt fine. Tennis and golf don't need spectators.
I completely disagree with you on every single
What's
level.
been added to that? What's been added to it by the spectators?
You need spectators. They follow you around. There's fans there. You've got your caddies. You've got people normally cheering you on. You hit a good shot. They like, good shot, Rory. And towards the end, we saw the European fans really come to life. Lowry, McIlroy, they got such big cheers. And when they won, like, the celebrations were epic. And I think there's nothing worse than playing a game where...
in silence.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
Maybe the problem is not the presence of spectators. Maybe it's the lack of presence of security and police.
And
maybe
also,
this is the problem.
Another thing, no spectators. How are you going to fund the sport?
Well, I'm not saying we don't have them at all. I think on the 19th hole, you keep all your spectators there. When everyone gets back in afterwards, then you say, well done, Rory, you've done exceptionally well. Congratulations. Tommy Fleetwood, haven't you done fantastically?
Jono, I'm
you
horrified.
Congratulate them all. But I'm just wondering, and I don't play, so I don't know, but I know a lot of friends of mine who do say that when they're on the golf course, the key to being on the golf course is that silence is golden. They love the get away from it all vibe of.
But they're professionals. They train to be in front of these people.
Not when they're throwing bottles at his
No,
wife.
I'm saying that was shocking.
Absolutely. But
that was shocking.
But that's spectacular. I honestly think we'll see a different Ryder Cup in 2027. I would like to think that we'll see more respectful fans, and I'd like to see another win for Europe.
But hopefully, it's good that Jono doesn't sit on any of the boards of these federations that govern, any of these bodies that govern golf. Otherwise, no spectators.
And no funding.
And no funding for you as well.
Just playing it to a tennis court and hearing the echo of
To be honest, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of golf. I don't really follow it, so it doesn't matter. For me, at least.
Well...
Whether there are spectators or not, I might agree with
Raya's not going.
I'm not going to go.
Great hospitality, and always at the golf.
Either way, if there's spectators or no spectators.
I'm not going to watch it on TV.
Amazing hospitality, and that's what I would recommend 100%. The hospitality is away from the course.
I must admit something. I love watching golf, and I would spend all weekend watching the Ryder Cup. I come from a very keen golfing family, and I do feel like whole point of golf is how close you can get and how personal it can be. And I also think it's pretty amazing skill to have, and I would love to be able to play golf like a lot of them. But obviously the abuse is not on. But at the end of the day, they all got a massive payday. They celebrated. They were singing loads of songs. Donald Trump said he saw them win. So, we all end on a positive note.
Is it true? I mean, I was reading about this.
Yeah.
And I was quite shocked. It's a tournament with no rewards, like financial
No, it's
reward?
the cup. It's the cup. It's a Ryder Cup. So it's basically between the US and Europe, and they choose different teams from each country. So the best players from each country be selected
But
for the Ryder Cup.
what would they win? I mean, there's no
Well,
financial
basically,
reward.
it's just like an accolade. It's the biggest accolade because it's the US against Europe, and they'll get loads of money in sponsorships.
Sponsorships,
Yeah.
probably,
Bragging
and
rights as well.
endorsements.
Bragging rights.
Yeah.
Bragging rights.
Yeah, like who's the better? Because there's always this question: is the PGA Tour, which is in America, better than the the tour that we see in Europe? And this has been the big conflict in golf for years and years. You know, are you more professional if you're on the Europe Tour? Are you more professional if you're on the American Tour? Right now, that answers the questions. You're on the European Tour, which will annoy the PGA Tour.
Okay.
Does this make any sense?
Yes. Well, I mean, what I know about the Ryder Cup, that it started in the 20s, and apparently it started US against UK, right?
It's moved on.
It's moved on from then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I've got all that golf knowledge right, because my
Pretty
father will be watching.
Pretty impressive.
She does come from a
I
keen
actually
golfing
forgot what
family.
I actually forgot what the European Tour is called, but I'm sure my dad will tell me later. And we got to that great part of the show where Jono and Raya have done a bit of homework and they've come up with the quirkiest stories of the day. Jono, I mean, tell us more about squirrels terrorizing people in California.
Yeah, bringing the gold again today. Let's take it to San Rafael, where locals there are being attacked by unusually aggressive squirrels. I don't know if it's singular or plural, but one in particular has been biting people, scratching, even jumped onto somebody's head and caused major injuries. There's been flyers put up in the neighbourhood where you can see, this is the offending squirrel, by the way. They've got an up-close shot of him. This is his mugshot. They now warn him a very mean squirrel, with locals, several in fact, have ended up in ER with injuries. 2 people have suffered serious injuries. However, wildlife experts have said it's likely that this animal was actually hand-fed by humans. Now, it doesn't know how to forage. So what it's doing is actually trying to get food, but because humans are not giving it food, it's turning to aggression instead, and it's become somewhat of a furry menace instead of the shy backyard critter that it's supposed to be normally. So it is causing some injuries, and it has inflicted 2 people with a buzz been referred to as...
wanted dead or alive?
Well, no, I think they want to keep it alive, but they're just warning people to stay away from it. But this is the classic case of when humans get over-involved in wildlife, and this is what's happened here. This squirrel has been taught that he can get food from humans. Now he's doing it a little bit more aggressively as well. It's almost like you're running a McDonald's and he's walked in at 10 to 12 and you're about to shut up shop and you want food and you're not getting it off the staff behind the counter. This squirrel has taken it up a notch as well. So locals have been warned to steer clear of that squirrel or anyone that matches his description, which I think is actually quite a generic look. I think most squirrels look like this guy. So just if you are out and about.
He doesn't have
Stay away
a
from
scar on the left
No,
hand.
not at the moment. A small prison tattoo under
No,
his
he's
neck.
got nothing like
Or
that.
an iPad or something.
Yeah, he doesn't have any. But I must admit something. I have 2 Jack Russells and lived in London for a long time where there were a lot of squirrels. And Jack Russells and squirrels, they don't cohabit well. And I was always frightened of my Jack Russells with squirrels because squirrels can
get
actually
really
cause
aggressive.
I know the Jack Russell could probably cause more damage, but squirrels can be very vicious.
Well, this one is very, very much so. Let's just hope he doesn't get armed or weaponized. That's
Yeah.
the last thing we need.
Yeah, but he doesn't...
Well, he's in the States.
Yeah, you never know.
No, yeah.
You never know.
But let's just say, squirrel, behave. We'll feed you a little bit later. And Rauya, yours is about an Egyptian wrestler has been showing off his incredible strength.
I think after we know all the details of this, we're all going to feel super weak. Anyways, this guy has managed to pull a 700-ton ship with his teeth. You can see the footage. And apparently, he is 44 years old. He is about 1.9 meters tall and 155 kilograms. He weighs that much. And he has tried to do this many times before. Apparently, he managed also to pull 2 ships weighing together more than 1,150 tons. He wants to also pull, apparently, an airplane. He was thinking about also pulling a submarine with his eyelashes or something.
Bored.
He must be. Well, he trains a lot.
Oh,
he trains for a
do you
very,
train
very
for
long
that?
time.
Do you think he got his teeth done in Turkey?
Oh, I doubt it. I don't think a banana would whip them out.
Maybe he has nails
His
for
dentist
teeth.
hates him. There's no way. I don't know how you even go about being like, this is my skill. I can. Like, how do you figure that out?
I'm sure the leverage doesn't come from the teeth. It comes from the jaw.
jaws.
Must do, right?
The jaw muscles are one of the
But how do you think you
big
figure
muscles.
out that you're good at that? How do you think you figure out, oh, I'm good at pulling
I hate
things
to think.
with my teeth?
But I do know that when I was growing up, it was always said, don't use your teeth to do anything. Don't open like cans with them or anything like this. This guy's parents have done a really bad job on telling him, not, you don't go around pulling a boat or a submarine
Well,
with
he
your
still
teeth.
has his teeth, so maybe it's not.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a great trick if you were doing it with your gums, I guess. So that's.
He calls himself the strongest man in the world. He apparently trains for 6 hours daily, and he eats protein, protein-rich diet, an iron-rich diet, at least a dozen eggs, 2 whole chickens, and about 5 kilograms of fish daily.
Wow.
So if you eat that much, you train that much, maybe you'll have such strength.
That's incredible.
That is amazing, isn't it? I think that we should all walk home tonight, eat some protein, get our strength
Walk
up.
home, we're gonna burn off some protein.
Burn off protein.
I think it's a sponsorship deal, because on something like that, you'd hope that he's getting paid money, because otherwise it costs a fortune to feed this guy every single day.
Oh, yeah. Colgate. He's available. Thanks to our guests, Al Arabiya senior presenter Rawiya Alami and Dubai 92 presenter John O'Hayes. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, follow us on X, GNT with Tom Burgess Watson. Here's coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.